Smile, be, chat, join 4 networking.
So this is a foresight that I used to do when I first joined 4 networking because I didn't have any other stories to tell. It's changed a little bit over the years because my life has changed a little bit over the years. But the title of the foresight was, It's All My Fault. And it's about how the decisions I made got me to where I am. I was born in 1965. I was the product of a sperm donation by a fellow named Frank Nagles. That's one of the 2 things he ever did for me. The second thing he did for me is in 1966, he disappeared. Like a fart in the wind, he was gone. That was the greatest thing he could have ever done for me, because I have an older brother and an older sister, and they've told me stories about what it was like to live with Frank Nagles. I came out ahead in the deal. That was the last bad thing that ever happened to me that was somebody else's fault. Every other decision was mine. So let's go forward from 1966 to 1983. I was sitting in my mother's house. I'm 18 years old. I'm sitting on her couch. I'm smoking pot. I'm watching MTV. I'm unemployed, and I've quit school. Now I have to stop right now and say that some of this is the first time that my children are likely to hear these stories. They're 24 and 26 now. So, if I stutter around a little bit, it's because I've protected them all these years. So it's 1983. I'm sitting on my mother's couch. I'm smoking pot. I'm watching MTV, and a commercial comes on. And it's an Army commercial. And it says, it goes through the story and shows helicopters and all this stuff, and has a tagline, "Be all you can be." And the commercial ends, and I went in the kitchen, I got a beer, a bag of crisps, went and sat back down on the couch. Watched a little more MTV. 30 minutes later, another commercial comes on. The commercial says, it's an Army commercial. Helicopters, tanks, all this stuff again. Tagline, what a great place. What a great place to start. I put down my beer. I finished my joint. And I thought, you know what? I'm 18 years old. I'm unemployed. I've left school. I'm sitting on my mom's couch in my underwear, smoking pot and drinking beer. Maybe that's a good place to start. I got in my car, drove to the Army recruiter's office, took a series of tests, told a series of lies, and got admitted to the United States Army. April 12th, 1983. I made a decision. Enough was enough. If I was going to do anything with my life, that was a good day to get started. So I smoked pot for a couple more months, as you do. Smoked pot for a couple more months, but they had told me, during the interview to join the Army, they say to you, have you ever smoked marijuana? They also ask you if you ever had sex with a man. That question was a lot easier to deal with than the all right? So they say, have you ever smoked pot? No, of course I don't smoke pot. Okay, let's ask you one more time. Have you ever smoked pot? No, I've never smoked pot. And the guy leans forward and he says, listen, let me help you. You're high right now. But when you go home, stop smoking pot, because if you smoke 30 days before you join the Army, on day 1 they're going to give you a urinalysis and they'll send you home. Okay, so that meant on June the 14th, 1983, I had to stop smoking pot because I was going in on July the 14th. So I made a decision. I stopped smoking pot. I just put it down, walked away from it. It's no big deal because my life depended on it. So I joined the Army. I go through the training. I go through all that. And I'm almost done with training. I've been in training for about 8 weeks, and they give us our assignments. Your first duty station, where are you going to go? Now, my first duty station was going to be at Fort Polk, Louisiana. It's a swamp. A buddy of mine has an assignment to Germany. And we're sitting there talking, and the last place on earth I wanted to go was Fort Polk, Louisiana. The last place on earth he wanted to go? Germany. So I made a decision. I asked him to swap, and we went to the recruiter and said, can we swap assignments? He said, as long as it's the same job, you can do what you want. So I made a decision to go to Germany. So I went to Germany. First duty assignment, I'm a private. They don't even call you by your rank. You're Nagles. That's all you are. You're one step above the trainee. So I'm at my first duty station. Got there 3 days before Christmas, 1983. A couple of weeks after Christmas, go on a field maneuver, and we're in these Army vehicles and we're driving. We're on the Autobahn. The Autobahn speed limit is unlimited. So all these Mercedes and cars are flying past us. We're in these Vietnam-era Army trucks going 25 miles an hour. And I'm with this sergeant. I'm driving. The sergeant is sitting next to me, and he pulls out a Pepsi can. Some of you will know where I'm going. He pulls out a Pepsi can. He kind of crimps it in the middle, takes a ballpoint pen, pokes a hole in it, pulls this little foil packet out of his pocket. That was the first time I ever smoked hash. He takes the hash, puts it on the Coke can, fires it up, takes a deep breath, and goes, "You want some of this?" And I went, "All right." So I smoked hash. So for about 3 months, I smoked a lot of hash. And then, hey, this was your idea. I told you last night I wasn't ready. So for about 3 months, I smoked a lot of hash. Got a phone call one day. Tomorrow, they're going to do a urinalysis test. This was somebody at headquarters looking out for a bunch of us. He said, they've got the list together. Everybody whose Social Security number, that's American for National Insurance number, he said everybody whose Social Security number ends in 3 is going to get tested. Guess what my Social Security number ends in? So I went into a panic. So the guy who had been feeding me hash for all these months says, "No problem, I'll tell you what you do. You mix vinegar and orange juice together." He said, "You're going to have to drink about 3 gallons of it because you have absolutely got to flush your system out and get this out of your system." So I made a decision. I started drinking vinegar and orange juice all night long. Drinking vinegar and orange juice, vinegar and orange juice, vinegar and orange juice. God, I was so sick of vinegar and orange juice. And I made a decision. If this is the result of smoking hash, I am done with hash. Because I don't want to get busted, and I don't want to lose what I'm building here. So I stopped smoking hash. Worst part of that story is they didn't test us. They didn't test us. But every once in a while in life, you get a little wake-up call, and that was my wake-up call, so I quit smoking hash. So a few weeks later, I made a decision to go to a party at a friend's house. The friend was English, oddly enough. This is all taking place in Germany now. I go to a friend's house, and there's this girl there. And she's cute enough, she's nice enough, and I thought, I'll ask her out. So I asked her out, and she turned me down. All right, well, that's not the first time in my life that had ever happened. I was able to roll with the punches. But I ran into her again a couple of weeks later. And again, I said, let's go do something. She was like, okay. So it was just one of those things where she really honestly had nothing better to do. So she took pity on me, and we went out. After our first date, I took her back. She actually was working for a German furniture company that sold furniture to American soldiers. In other words, she was a thief. But that's a different foresight. So I took her back to her hotel. She was living in a hotel. I took her back to her hotel. We're standing on the doorstep, and I said, I enjoyed that. I hope you. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I said, would you like to do something again? She said, yes. Why don't you knock me up in the morning? Now, a little English versus American here. In America, if you knock somebody up, your life is over. The next 9 months are going to be rough, and 30 years after that's going to be tough too. So she sorted me out. She could see the fear in my eyes when she said, come knock me up in the morning. So we went out on another date. Now we're in the car. We're driving to Munich. I'm driving. She's sitting in the seat next to me doing a crossword puzzle. And she's doing the crossword puzzle, and she says, Michael. I said, yes. She said, have you got a rubber? Now, time to do another English versus American. All right? In England, you call that a condom. In America, we call it an eraser. Okay? So she says, Michael, have you got a rubber? I said, well, no, but I could get one. She said, no, it's not important. Don't worry about it. No, really. If you think I should have one, we can probably get one up here. No, it's no big deal. And the rest of the date was me just going, should I, shouldn't I, do I need one, do I not need one? The moral of that story is, I made the decision to marry her. All right, so that was 1984. In December of 1984, I came over here to meet her family for Christmas. That was the first time I ever came to England. That decision, more than any of the things I told you about before, is what changed my life. Because I married the right person. I'm one of the luckiest people you'll ever meet because I married the right person. She doesn't believe she married the right person most of the time, but I married the right person. So we stayed in the Army for another 10 years. I got a little bit of rank. I got a little bit of, some good training and had some good jobs. I was doing some exciting things. We had 2 children, Kyle and Kelsey, a few months apart. They'll love hearing their name on this. The Army, in its infinite wisdom, the Cold War had ended. The wall had come down. The troops were all leaving Germany. We were in Texas again. And I was told, we're going to send you to Korea. Well, I don't want to go to Korea. Well, your next assignment's going to be Korea. No, I don't want to go to Korea. I want to go back to Germany. You'll probably never go back to Germany. That part of the world is over. So I made a decision it was time to leave the Army. Took a civilian job, started working for some companies, moved around a little bit, did some different things, got some skills, got some experience, and found myself about 12 years later as general manager for an operation. Had a good reputation in this company. They had moved me 3 or 4 times. I was the boss. It was a great operation, but every boss has a boss, and my boss liked to call me. Are you listening to me?
Yes.
My boss liked to call me, and I would sit there and I would think, all right, we've got the service side covered, we've got all the sales covered, I fired that guy, I hired this guy, I've got everything perfect. And my boss liked to call me and go, what's going on with so-and-so? Oh, well, that was the one thing I hadn't looked at today. And so he'd call every day. He'd call every day. And I don't know what made him do this, but finally he called one day and I said, this job would be a lot easier if you'd quit calling me every day and asking me what I'm doing about problems. He said, oh, okay, I'll quit calling you. 2 days later, I've been somewhere. I pull back to the office and he's sitting at my desk. Now, I had made a decision to be a dickhead to my boss. He made a decision to stop being my boss. So he fired me, and that changed my life. I went to work for another company that was completely unrelated to the first one because I was fed up with that. At that company, every day, the sales manager would walk through the sales room, because I had taken a sales job. Every day he'd walk through the sales room and he'd say, I've just been looking at your numbers and things are a little poor. Well, okay, I'll work on it. Yeah, you need to work on that because if you don't, we've got a box with your name on it. This was his leadership style. His leadership style was threaten them every day, threaten them every day. So one day, after working there for about 1.5 years, I got fed up. And I got an email telling me about my numbers in the box. So I got up, I walked across the room, I went to his office, I opened the door that he had closed. Opened the door, he said, yeah, what do you want? I said, I just came to get my box. And I went back to my desk, I packed my stuff up, I got in the car. Greatest feeling in the world. I packed that's not a book, I was going to drop that. So I packed my box, I got in the car, and drove home. Now, as I'm driving home, I'm thinking, yeah, she's probably not going to find this as cute as I did. But I had made a decision. That decision resulted in me getting the same job at another company for 20% more pay that was a much better job, and I didn't have to commute an hour to get to work. Now, unfortunately, then the 2008 recession hit. That business started dying. It was based on transportation and fuel, and it just didn't work out. So I made a decision to start my own business. That was 2008, and that began one of the greatest experiences of my life and the longest period of misery I've ever known. I'm one of the people you'll meet at 4Networking that does not want to own their own business. I've never been so unhappy as when I owned my own business. It wasn't about money. I just didn't like owning my own business. It was just me and the beagle. Okay? I had worked for companies where I was a team leader, and I made people's lives better by training them and developing them and helping them grow. And when I started my own business, it was me and the dog knew everything there was to know about life. So I had an opportunity to change that. Terry and I sat New Year's Eve, 2015, and we sat talking about what we were going to do that year. Not New Year's Day, 2015. And we sat talking about what we were going to do this year. And I told her, I said, I don't know, something's going to change this year. Something's going to change this year. I'm fed up with this. Again, I tell you, it wasn't about money. We were okay with the money. I just didn't like what I was doing. So we made the decision that something would change by the end of the year. I didn't know what it was. Well, in May of 2015, another opportunity came along. Some of you know about it, some of you don't. But the opportunity was to close my business and take a job again. So I made a decision. I made a decision. The whole point is just make a decision. All these decisions I've made, I never made a decision to be an abandoned child, as it were. And I had a mother, so the abandoned child is not the right phrase. But I never made a decision that Frank Nagles would disappear. It wasn't until I was in my 40s that I realized what a gift that actually had been. I spent most of my life thinking he was a jerk for leaving me, and then suddenly one day realized what a great guy he was for leaving me. All right? But I just made a series of decisions over the years. Not all of them were good decisions. All right? But a lot of us just ignore the fact that we make decisions. Every day we make decisions. Do I want to do this or don't I want to do this? I'm amazed at how much time people spend talking themselves out of doing something instead of talking themselves into doing it. And both tasks take the same amount of time. All right? So talk yourself into doing something. Make a decision. Don't just sit there. Don't be indecisive. Make a decision. I didn't drive for the first 6 months I was a member of 4Networking because I was scared of roundabouts. We don't have roundabouts in America, and I couldn't get my head around how these things worked. My wife, being English, she did all the driving. I'd ride with her, and I kept thinking, I'll ride with her, and I'll figure out how they work. I'll just watch her. We'd set the sat-nav up. We'd pull up to a roundabout, and the sat-nav would say, at the roundabout, turn right. And we'd get to the roundabout, and I'd look, and I'd say, there's cars coming from the right. If we turn right, we're never going to make it. So I made the decision that I was not going to drive. I'm just not going to drive. Well, then I started going to 4Networking meetings, and to get to the meetings, I had to get there somehow. My wife, for the first 6 months I was in 4Networking, she drove me to 4Networking meetings and sat in the car park. And that was, you would think that was the end of the story, but every time I'd come out of the meeting, I'd get in the car and she'd say, so, did you sell anything? And so I made a decision I should go get driving lessons. All right? I made a decision. Every step of the way I made a decision. Do it, don't do it, it's up to you. Your life's in your hands. Just, if it's going to be your fault, make sure it's a good thing and not a bad thing. I'm Michael Nagles.
Smile, be chat, join for networking.